My name is Alara Vance, and for as long as I can remember, the scent of baking bread and the quiet hum of the pre-dawn world have been my companions. I live in Port Blossom, a small coastal town in Maine where the sea breeze whispers secrets through the pines and the rhythm of the tides dictates the pace of life. Here, in a little cottage painted the color of a summer sky, I raise my son, Leo. He's 10 now, with eyes the color of the deep ocean and a mind that sparkles with an almost impossible brightness. My days, or rather my nights, are spent at the Morning Lark Bakery. It's a tiny, artisanal place tucked away on a cobbled side street, and I'm one of the bakers who coax life into dough long before the first sleepy seagull even considers its morning flight. I arrive when the stars are still sharp against the inky canvas, and I leave as the sun begins to paint the harbor with hues of rose and gold. It's demanding work, shaping sourdoughs, laminating pastries, ensuring the muffins are plump and the scones perfectly craggy. The fatigue often settles deep in my bones, a constant companion since my divorce from Mark 2 years ago. "You'll never give him the life he deserves without me," he'd said, his words a parting shot meant to wound, and for a time, they did. But Leo, my Leo, is the sun that chases away such shadows. He has a way of seeing the world, a gentle curiosity that translates into incredible creativity. Last spring, his project for the school's Young Inventors Fair, a miniature, self-sustaining tidal pool ecosystem, won him accolades and a small feature in the Port Blossom Chronicle. His teachers spoke of his potential in hushed, reverent tones, of scholarships to places I could only dream of. For me, there was no sweeter music, no greater balm to the weariness than the light in Leo's eyes when he talked about his latest discovery or idea. Our little cottage isn't grand, but it's filled with the warmth of our shared life. Leo's sketches and invention diagrams are blue-tacked to the fridge, and the scent of cinnamon and sugar often lingers in the air from my weekend baking experiments with him. I believed, with all my heart, that I was weaving a tapestry of love and security for him, thread by patient thread. It was autumn in Port Blossom, the maples and oaks blushing in vibrant crimsons and golds, the air crisp with the promise of wood smoke and colder nights. The busiest season for the bakery, with tourists still lingering for the foliage and locals craving warm, comforting treats. I'd finish my shift around 6 in the morning, the scent of yeast and warm sugar clinging to my clothes, and hurry home to prepare Leo's lunch before he woke for school. It was a ritual, a small act of devotion I clung to. "Morning, Mama." Leo would pad into the kitchen, his dark hair tousled, pajamas still rumpled. He'd wrap his arms around my waist, a small, warm anchor in my often turbulent sea of exhaustion. I'd fight back the heaviness in my eyelids, the ache in my shoulders, and smile. "Good morning, my little owlet. Today, it's your favorite veggie wrap with my special hummus." I'd carefully spread the creamy chickpea paste on a whole wheat tortilla, layering it with crisp lettuce, grated carrots, and cucumber moons. Our fridge wasn't always overflowing, but I took a quiet pride in crafting nutritious, appealing meals for him within our modest means. Sliced peaches, still holding the sun's summer sweetness, would go into a small container, perhaps a sprinkle of cinnamon for warmth. And always a homemade blueberry oat muffin, his absolute favorite, baked in the quiet hours after my shift, a small defiance against sleep. "Mama, you stayed up making muffins again, didn't you?" he'd sometimes ask, a flicker of concern in his oceanic eyes. "It's all right, sweet boy. Mama's a night bird, remember." I'd chirp, though the truth was, I often swayed with tiredness as I measured flour and folded in the berries, the oven's warmth a siren song luring me toward sleep. "What marvels are you conjuring at school today?" I'd ask, tucking the napkin into his lunchbox, a bright blue one with a leaping dolphin on the lid. "Art class. Mr. Finch said we're starting our seascapes today." But then, a subtle shadow would cross his face. "Lately, though, I haven't been looking forward to lunchtime much." "Oh, why is that, my love?" "It's nothing," he'd say quickly, his gaze dropping. "What time will you be home from the bakery tonight, Mama?" Early morning, as usual. But Friday, I have an afternoon shift for a special order, so we can have a proper dinner together, maybe make that shepherd's pie you like. The school bus would rumble to a halt at the end of our lane, and Leo would dash off after a quick kiss and a hug, his lunchbox swinging at his side. I love you, Mama. I love you more, my Leo. Listening to the bus pull away, a tendril of unease would curl in my chest. Something was amiss. My maternal heart, that deep, instinctual compass, sensed a shift in Leo's currents, but my mind, clouded by perpetual tiredness, couldn't quite grasp its nature. He was bringing his lunchbox home less empty these days, often claiming he just wasn't hungry. His grades remained excellent, his passion for learning undimmed, yet the innocent, easy joy in his smile seemed muted. One chilly evening in mid-October, the scent of fallen leaves and damp earth heavy in the air, I returned from my shift. The bakery had been frantic, a large order for a town festival keeping us on our toes. I unlocked the door to our cottage, expecting Leo to be at the kitchen table with his homework. He was there, pencil in hand, but next to him, his lunchbox sat, almost entirely untouched. Welcome home, Mama. He looked up, offering a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. I picked up the lunchbox, my heart sinking a little. The veggie wrap was still perfectly rolled, the peaches untouched. Only a few bites were missing from the blueberry oat muffin. You didn't eat your lunch again, sweet boy? I asked, keeping my voice light, masking the worry that pricked at me. Are you feeling unwell? No, I'm fine. He turned back to his math problems. I had a cookie from Sam's mom at recess, so I wasn't really hungry. I knew Leo rarely took money to school for snacks. Still, I didn't press him. Instead, I decided to make his favorite shepherd's pie for dinner, layering the savory mince with a fluffy cloud of sweet potato topping, hoping its comforting warmth might coax something out of him. The next morning, I took extra care with his lunch. I made almond butter and homemade strawberry preserve sandwiches on soft, seeded bread, added a few cheese stars, and tucked in a small, fragrant zucchini carrot mini loaf I'd baked specially. Today's a little bit of sunshine in a box, I said, handing it to him. Leo took the lunchbox, but his expression, instead of brightening, seemed to cloud over. Thank you, Mama. But you don't have to go to so much trouble. What do you mean, love? Nothing. He gave a quick, distracted hug and hurried out the door. That evening, the lunchbox returned, heartbreakingly full. The sandwiches were uneaten, the loaf untouched. My anxiety began to bloom, a cold flower in my chest. Leo seemed thinner, his usual vibrant energy subdued, replaced by a quiet pensiveness that felt too heavy for his young shoulders. On Friday night, as we shared the promised shepherd's pie, I decided to gently probe. Has anything new been happening at school, Leo? Made any new friends or anything different in class? Not really. He poked at his sweet potato, topping with his fork. Everyone's just normal. How's lunchtime? Do you all eat together in the cafeteria? His hand stilled. Sort of. If you're not eating the lunches I make, perhaps we should try the school lunches for a while? No. His voice was suddenly sharp, his eyes wide. No, I want your lunches, Mama. I do. I really haven't been very hungry lately. Honest. I was taken aback by his vehemence. It wasn't like Leo to get so agitated. Over the weekend, I bumped into Nora Peterson at the Saturday farmers market. Nora, with her kind eyes and gentle smile, owned the Salty Needle, a charming little craft store in town. Her son, Sam, was in Leo's class. Alara, lovely to see you. Nora's voice was as warm as the autumn sunshine filtering through the market stalls. How's Leo doing? Sam mentioned he seems a bit down in the dumps lately. Really? I tried to keep the surprise from my voice. He seems okay at home. A little quiet, maybe? You know how kids are, Nora said, her expression sympathetic. Sometimes they bottle things up, trying not to worry us. I'm sure it's just a phase. 10 is such a funny age, isn't it? So grown up one minute, so little the next. Nora's words offered a sliver of reassurance, but the knot of unease in my stomach didn't quite dissolve. That evening, I was walking past Leo's room. His door was slightly ajar, and I peeked in. He was at his desk, but his notebooks were closed. He was just staring out the window, his small shoulders slumped, an expression of profound sadness on his face that a child of 10 should never have to wear. I knocked softly. "May I come in, my sweet?" "Yes." He hastily opened a textbook, a blush creeping up his neck. I sat on the edge of his bed, the familiar scent of his little boy world, books, sea salt from his beach treasures, and a faint hint of blueberry from forgotten muffin crumbs, enveloping me. "Leo, if something is troubling you, you know you can tell me, don't you? I'll listen to anything, and we can face it together." He was silent for a long time, tracing patterns on his duvet with a fingertip. Then, so quietly I almost didn't hear him, he whispered, "Mama, I'm sorry. It's my fault." "What do you mean, darling? What's your fault? I'm not a good boy, am I? That's why Papa left, isn't it?" A shard of ice pierced my heart. I pulled him into my arms, holding him close. "Oh, Leo, no. Never, ever think that. Papa leaving had nothing to do with you. That was about grown-up things, problems between him and me. You are the best boy, the kindest, smartest, most wonderful boy in the entire world. But you're always so tired because of me, aren't you?" His voice was muffled against my shoulder. "If I wasn't here, you wouldn't have to work so hard at the bakery all night." "Leo." I tilted his chin up, forcing him to meet my gaze. "You are my treasure. You are the reason I can do anything. Being your mama is the best job I've ever had. Yes, I get tired from working at the bakery, but that's just work. You, my love, you give me strength." He nodded, a small, jerky movement, but I sensed a deeper sorrow still coiled within him, something he couldn't yet bring himself to share. The following Monday, as I prepared his lunch, a colorful pasta salad with roasted vegetables and a side of crisp apple slices, I pondered a new strategy. Perhaps it was the food itself. Maybe his tastes were changing. I resolved to ask him directly that evening for his absolute favorite things, determined to pack a lunch so irresistible he couldn't refuse. But that day, too, the lunchbox returned with most of its contents intact. Tuesday morning, after Leo had left for Seabreeze Elementary, a knot of dread tightening in my stomach, I called his teacher, Mrs. Evelyn Reed. She was a veteran educator, known for her strict adherence to curriculum and a somewhat formal demeanor. I'd always found her polite, if a little distant. "Good morning, Mrs. Reed. This is Alara Vance, Leo's mother." "Good morning, Ms. Vance. How can I help you?" Her voice was brisk, professional. "Actually, I'm a little worried about Leo. He's hardly been eating his lunch at all for the past couple of weeks. I was wondering how he seems in class." There was a pause. "Well," Mrs. Reed said, her tone measured, "Leo's academic performance remains exemplary, Ms. Vance. He's focused during lessons, and his contributions are always insightful. He is, perhaps, a little more reserved than some of the other children. Quieter during group activities, maybe, but nothing I would deem a significant concern. Is there any problem with friends? Or anything at all that might be upsetting him?" "I haven't observed any overt issues. As I said, he's a diligent student. I will, of course, keep a closer eye on him. If anything specific comes to my attention, I shall contact you immediately." Hanging up the phone, my anxiety intensified rather than abated. Mrs. Reed's reassurances felt hollow, her observations superficial. The feeling that Leo's troubles were more serious than a simple loss of appetite or a passing mood grew stronger. That night, as Leo worked on a diagram for a new invention, a miniature wind turbine designed to power a reading light, I watched him. He was absorbed, as always, when engaged in a project, but every now and then, a sigh, too deep for his small chest, would escape him. Suddenly, he put down his pencil and turned to me, his brow furrowed. "Mama," he asked, his voice small, "am I different from the other kids?" Different how, my love? I don't know. He looked away, back at his drawing. Just, sometimes I feel like I am. His words, so laden with an unspoken weight, sent a shiver down my spine. I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the core, that something was deeply wrong. Wednesday. I was at the Morning Lark, kneading a large batch of challah dough, the rhythmic push and pull usually a soothing meditation. But today, my mind was a maelstrom of worry. I finished my shift early, a rare occurrence, as one of the ovens was acting up and needed to be serviced. I decided to use the unexpected free time to do some grocery shopping and perhaps bake something special with Leo later. I was in the produce aisle of the Port Blossom Market, considering a bright bunch of kale, when my mobile phone rang. The caller ID displayed Seabreeze Elementary. My heart leaped into my throat. Is this Ms. Vance? The voice was male, unfamiliar, with a gentle, concerned timbre. This is Alastair Finch, from Seabreeze Elementary. I'm Leo's art teacher. Mr. Finch. Leo adored his art class. He often spoke of Mr. Finch's kindness and the way he encouraged even the wildest artistic ideas. Yes, this is she. Is Leo all right? Has something happened? I'm so sorry to call you like this, Ms. Vance, especially if you're at work. Leo is physically safe. Please don't worry about that. But an incident has occurred, a rather serious matter, and we feel it's important you come to the school as soon as you can. Mr. Finch's voice was grave, laced with an urgency that set alarm bells ringing in my head. I can be there in 15 minutes. My shopping basket clattered to the floor, apples rolling in every direction. What is it? What's happened? It's better if we discuss it in person, Ms. Vance. Principal Atherton would like to speak with you as well. Please, just come as soon as you're able. My mind raced. Had Leo been hurt in a way Mr. Finch wasn't telling me? Had he gotten into some kind of trouble? The possibilities, each more frightening than the last, swirled around me as I drove towards the school, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles were white. The school secretary, Mrs. Albright, usually so cheerful, greeted me with a solemn expression and led me directly to Principal Atherton's office. The room felt unnaturally quiet. Principal Marian Atherton, a woman I'd always respected for her calm competence, sat behind her large oak desk. To one side sat Mr. Finch, his usually expressive face etched with concern. And to the other, to my utter surprise, sat Mrs. Evelyn Reed, Leo's homeroom teacher. Her face was pale, her customary composure entirely absent. She looked rattled. Ms. Vance, thank you for coming so promptly, Principal Atherton began, her voice gentle but firm. Please sit down. First, I want to reassure you that Leo is in the nurse's office resting. He has not been physically harmed. Then what is it? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. What's happened? Mr. Finch leaned forward slightly. Ms. Vance, during the lunch break today, I happened to find Leo in the corridor outside the art room. He was quite distressed, crying. He wouldn't tell me what was wrong, but he seemed so unlike himself that I felt I had to look into it. Look into it how? We reviewed the school's security camera footage from the cafeteria and the classrooms, Principal Atherton said, her expression grim. And we discovered something deeply troubling. She gestured to a laptop on her desk, turning the screen so I could see it. This is footage from Mrs. Reed's class yesterday, during what was supposed to be a health and nutrition segment. Before I play it, I must warn you, Ms. Vance, it is quite upsetting. I held my breath, my gaze fixed on the screen. It showed Leo's classroom. The children were at their desks, lunchboxes open. Mrs. Reed stood at the front, a pointer in her hand. The audio is also recorded, Mr. Finch said softly. Please listen. On the screen, Mrs. Reed began to speak, her voice clear and authoritative. All right, class, today we're going to discuss the components of a well-balanced lunch. It's important to understand how good nutrition fuels our bodies and minds. We'll look at some examples to help us differentiate. She scanned the room, her gaze pausing, then moved towards Leo's desk. My heart constricted. She picked up Leo's bright blue lunchbox. Now, take this lunch, for example. She held it up for the class to see. This is an instance of what we might call an imbalanced approach. I stared, disbelieving. The lunch I had packed with such care, the veggie wrap, the sliced peaches, the blueberry oat muffin, was being presented as a negative example. Mrs. Reed continued, her tone patronizing. Often, in households where a parent is, shall we say, overstretched, perhaps a single-parent household with limited time or resources, we see lunches that might lack certain key nutritional elements. Whole wheat tortillas are a good start, but store-bought hummus can be surprisingly high in sodium. And while homemade baked goods are charming, they often contain more sugar than is ideal, and perhaps not enough whole grains or complex carbohydrates. In the footage, Leo was looking down at his desk, his small hands clenched into fists in his lap. I could hear the faint murmur of other children whispering. Then, a boy's voice, clear and carrying, "Mrs. Reed, does that mean it's like a poor kid's lunch?" It was Jasper Colton, son of Victor Colton, a prominent local developer known for his ostentatious wealth and somewhat abrasive personality. "Now, Jasper, we don't use labels like that," Mrs. Reed chided mildly, but then she added, almost as an aside, "However, it is a reality that access to a wide variety of fresh, organic ingredients can be a challenge for some families." Tears welled in my eyes, blurring the image on the screen. The food I rose in the dark to prepare, the food I poured my love and hopes into, was being dissected and shamed. My son was being shamed. I had never, in my darkest imaginings, conceived of such cruelty masquerading as education. The footage played on. After the lesson, during the actual lunch break in the cafeteria, Jasper Colton and a couple of his friends were shown approaching Leo. "Hey, Leo," Jasper said, a smirk on his face. "Your mom really doesn't know how to make a healthy lunch, huh? My mom says we only eat organic ancient grains and superfoods. Your lunch is just sad." "It's not sad," Leo mumbled, his face flushed. "My mom makes the best food." But Mrs. Reed said it's not balanced. She said single moms can't always do it right. "It's a sad, simple lunch." Jasper crowed, and the other children snickered. Leo's face crumpled, and he abruptly stood up, grabbing his lunchbox, and fled the cafeteria. "There's a little more," Mr. Finch said, his voice quiet with anger. The scene shifted to the corridor near the boys' restroom. Leo rushed into a stall, the door clicking shut. Then, small, heartbroken sobs, unmistakable and utterly devastating. The sound of my 10-year-old child, crying alone, because the lunch I made him with love had become a source of public humiliation. "That was yesterday," Principal Atherton said, gently closing the laptop. And today, when Mr. Finch found Leo so upset, he pressed for answers, and the full extent of this situation came to light. I sank back into my chair, a wave of nausea washing over me. The reason Leo hadn't been eating, his quiet sadness, his apologies, his question about being different, it all crashed down on me with sickening clarity. It was intended as a teachable moment. Mrs. Reed finally spoke, her voice trembling. "A practical application of our nutrition curriculum. I merely sought to use a real-world example to illustrate different dietary approaches." "A real-world example?" My voice, when I found it, was shaking with a cold fury I rarely allowed myself to feel. "You mean an example to belittle my son? To humiliate him in front of his peers?" That was certainly not my intention. I stood up, my legs unsteady. "You took the food I make for my child, food made with love in the few precious hours I have between my work and his needs, and you trampled on it. You trampled on him. And you called it education." Principal Atherton intervened. "Ms. Vance, please, I understand your outrage completely. The school takes full responsibility for this egregious lapse in judgment and professionalism." Mr. Finch spoke then, his gaze steady on Mrs. Reed. "Principal Atherton, if I may, this isn't the first time I've felt uneasy about some of Mrs. Reed's classroom comments. There have been instances where I felt certain students or certain family situations were subtly, or not so subtly, targeted. I had no concrete evidence before, but seeing Leo's distress today, I couldn't remain silent. Why wasn't this addressed sooner? I asked, the question hanging heavy in the air. As Mr. Finch said, without specific proof, it's difficult. The principal began, but I was already turning away. I took a deep, shuddering breath, trying to push down the torrent of emotions. I need to see my son. Please. Walking down the silent corridor to the nurse's office, a maelstrom of anger, grief, and an overwhelming surge of protective love for Leo churned within me. When I pushed open the door, he was sitting on the edge of the cot, his small face pale, his eyes red-rimmed. He looked up, and when he saw me, fresh tears welled. "Mama," he whispered, his voice thick with unshed sorrow. "Mama, I'm so sorry." "Oh, my sweet boy," I said, rushing to him, gathering him into my arms. "You are not the one who needs to apologize. Not ever." "I am so sorry, Leo. I'm so sorry I didn't see. I'm so sorry I didn't protect you." I held him tightly, rocking him gently, my own tears finally falling, mingling with his. That evening, back in the sanctuary of our little cottage, Leo curled up beside me on the sofa, his head resting in my lap. The scent of salt and tears clung to him. Finally, in the dim, comforting light of our living room, he began to speak, the words tumbling out in a rush of pain and confusion. "Mama, I have to tell you the truth," he began, his voice barely audible. "It wasn't that I couldn't eat my lunch. It was, I didn't want to eat it anymore." "Why, my love?" I asked gently, stroking his hair, my heart aching with every word he uttered. "Mrs. Reed, she started making comments a while ago. Little things at first. She'd walk by my desk at lunchtime and say things like, 'Still with the homemade treats, Leo,' or 'An interesting combination of ingredients today.' Then it got worse. She'd look at my wrap or my sandwich and say, right in front of everyone, 'Not much protein there again, is there? Or a bit heavy on the carbohydrates, perhaps?' And then Jasper and his friends started." His voice trembled. "They started calling it my sad lunch, or my poor kid's lunch. They'd make faces when I opened it. I was so embarrassed, Mama. I couldn't eat with everyone watching me, whispering. My chest felt tight, a band of sorrow constricting my breath." "Oh, Leo. Then why didn't you tell me, sweet boy?" Because you work so hard for me, Mama." Tears streamed down his face now. "You get up so early for the bakery and you're always tired, but you still make my lunch every single day. You put my favorite things in it. I couldn't tell you that they were saying bad things about it. I didn't want to make you feel bad. I didn't want you to think I didn't like your food. I love your food, Mama. I do." I held him as he sobbed, my own heart breaking and swelling simultaneously, breaking for his pain, swelling within fierce, tender love for this child, my child, whose first instinct was to protect me, even at his own expense. A deep anger at myself also surfaced. How had I been so blind, so caught up in my own exhaustion, that I hadn't seen the signs more clearly? "Leo," I whispered, my voice thick with emotion, "the most important thing in the world to me is your happiness. The lunch, the food, none of that matters if you're not okay. I am so incredibly sorry that I didn't realize how much you were suffering." The next morning, I called the Morning Lark and told them I needed to take a personal day. My first stop was the Port Blossom School District office. After explaining the situation concisely and calmly to the receptionist, I was granted an immediate meeting with Ms. Genevieve Thorne, the district superintendent. Ms. Thorne, a woman with keen, intelligent eyes and an air of no-nonsense efficiency, listened intently as I recounted the events, her expression growing increasingly grave. "Ms. Vance," she said, once I had finished, "we received a preliminary report from Principal Atherton late yesterday evening. First and foremost, on behalf of the entire district, I offer you and your son our sincerest apologies. What occurred is inexcusable. I placed a small digital recorder on the polished mahogany desk between us. For the record, Miss Thorne, I will be recording our conversation. Of course, she said, nodding with understanding. Mrs. Reed's actions, as you've described them and as the preliminary evidence suggests, represent a serious breach of professional ethics and our educational standards. Using any child's personal circumstances, especially in such a demeaning way, is utterly unacceptable. What specific actions will the district be taking? I asked, my voice steady. We are initiating an immediate investigation, but based on what Principal Atherton has already conveyed, we are considering Mrs. Reed's immediate administrative leave, followed by a likely transfer to a non-classroom-based position, pending the full review. Furthermore, the district will be implementing comprehensive mandatory training programs on diversity, inclusion, and sensitivity for all teaching staff, effective immediately. I felt a small measure of relief. It was a start, but it wasn't enough. That afternoon, I returned to Seabreeze Elementary for a meeting that Principal Atherton had arranged. Waiting in her office were Jasper Colton's parents, Victor and Celia Colton. Victor Colton, with his expensive suit and air of impatient importance, was a man used to getting his own way. Celia Colton, impeccably dressed and coiffed, surveyed me with a cool, appraising gaze. Miss Vance, Victor Colton began, his tone condescending. We've heard from Jasper about this lunchtime squabble. Frankly, to make such a mountain out of a molehill, a little bit of childish teasing, it seems rather overwrought, don't you think? I met his gaze directly, my own calm but unwavering. Mr. Colton, what your son participated in was not childish teasing. It was bullying, instigated and enabled by a teacher, that targeted my son based on his family circumstances and caused him significant emotional distress. Our Jasper was merely repeating what he's learned about healthy eating, Celia Colton interjected, her voice smooth as silk. He's a very health-conscious boy. And statistically, children from certain backgrounds often do have dietary deficiencies. Statistics? My voice, though quiet, vibrated with a tightly controlled anger. My son is not a statistic, Mrs. Colton. He is a child, a human being, who was deeply hurt by your son's cruel words and actions. Principal Atherton stepped in. Mr. and Mrs. Colton, the school views this incident as a serious case of bullying. Jasper's comments were inappropriate and hurtful, regardless of their supposed origin. He requires guidance and needs to understand the impact of his words. Victor Colton sighed dramatically. Fine. We'll have Jasper apologize. Is that sufficient to put this tedious matter to rest? No, I said firmly. That is not all. Your son needs to understand why his behavior was wrong. And I want an assurance from him, and from you, that he will never again treat another child with such disrespect. Later that evening, Leo and I returned to the quiet, empty school. Jasper and his parents were waiting in Principal Atherton's office. Jasper looked sullen, clearly unhappy to be there, but at a sharp nudge from his father, he shuffled forward. Leo, he mumbled, staring at his shoes. I'm sorry for saying mean stuff about your lunch. Leo looked up at me, his eyes questioning. I gave him a small, encouraging smile and a tiny nod. He took a deep breath. I'm sorry I got upset, Leo said, his voice surprisingly steady. But please, don't make fun of my family or my mom's food anymore. Okay, Jasper replied, looking slightly shamefaced. He glanced at Leo's now empty hands, then back at his face. Actually, he added, a note of surprising wistfulness in his voice, those blueberry muffins your mom makes, they always smelled really, really good. The unexpected confession hung in the air for a moment, disarming everyone. Even Victor Colton looked momentarily nonplussed. Leo blinked, then a small, tentative smile touched his lips. They are pretty good, he admitted. My mom's the best baker. The following week, Mrs. Reed's transfer to an administrative role at the district office was finalized. In her place, a new teacher arrived. Ms. Iris Holloway was young, perhaps in her late 20s, with warm, sparkling eyes and an infectious enthusiasm. She specialized in inclusive education practices and had a reputation for creating a classroom environment where every child felt seen and valued. In her very first class with them, Ms. Holloway said, "Good morning, everyone. In this classroom, we are a community. And in our community, we celebrate all kinds of families. Families with a mom and a dad, families with just a mom, or just a dad, families with two moms or two dads, families who live with grandparents or aunts and uncles. Every single family story is unique and precious, and the love in every family is just as strong and important." During lunchtime that day, in the newly positive atmosphere of Ms. Holloway's classroom, Leo opened his blue lunchbox and, for the first time in what felt like an eternity, ate every last bite of his veggie wrap and sliced peaches. He even saved his blueberry oat muffin. Jasper Colton, sitting at the table nearby, watched him for a moment. "Hey, Leo," he said, much more quietly than before. "Could I maybe try one of those muffins sometime?" Leo looked surprised, then grinned. "Sure. Or my mom could even give your mom the recipe, if you want. They're not hard to make." "Really? Cool. I'll ask her." That evening, I received an unexpected call from Clara, one of my fellow bakers at the Morning Lark, a kind woman with flour perpetually dusting her apron. "Alara, dear, we heard a bit about what happened with Leo at school. Some of the other moms who work early shifts like us were talking. My own daughter had a tough time with a clique in her class last year." Her voice was full of genuine sympathy. "We were thinking, maybe we could start a little coffee group? Just for working moms in Port Blossom, a place to share and support each other. Would you be interested?" I was touched by their kindness, a warmth spreading through my weary heart. "Clara, that's a wonderful idea. Thank you. And listen," she added, "if you ever need a hand with Leo's lunches, especially after a really tough night shift, some of us would be happy to take turns. It must be so hard." "Thank you, Clara, truly," I said, my voice a little choked. "But making Leo's lunch, that's our special thing. It's important to me. To us." "I understand completely," she said warmly. "But the offer stands. You just call if you ever need anything at all." After I hung up, I stood in my kitchen for a long moment, a sense of quiet gratitude washing over me. Then I began to prepare Leo's lunch for the next day, a hearty lentil soup in a thermos, a small whole wheat roll, crisp carrot sticks, and, of course, a blueberry oat muffin. Simple food, made with love. "Mama, what's for lunch tomorrow?" Leo peeked into the kitchen, his eyes bright again, the shadows seemingly lifted. "Your favorite lentil soup, my owlet. And I made an extra muffin, just in case Jasper wants to try one." "Thanks, Mama." He threw his arms around my waist. "I love your lunches more than anything in the whole world." 3 months later, I took an afternoon off from the bakery to attend Leo's class Inventors Showcase. Ms. Holloway had encouraged them to share their passions. In the bright, cheerful classroom, filled with colorful artwork and the excited chatter of children, Leo stood confidently at the front, presenting his refined tidal pool ecosystem model. He spoke eloquently about the delicate balance of marine life and the importance of protecting Port Blossom's unique coastal environment. "My family," he said, his gaze sweeping across his classmates and then finding mine at the back of the room, "is my mom and me. My mom works very early in the morning at the Morning Lark Bakery, making delicious bread and pastries that make people happy. And every single morning, even when she's super tired, she makes me a wonderful lunch, filled with love and healthy things. I'm really proud of my mom, and I'm proud of our family." Tears pricked my eyes as I listened, my heart swelling with a love so profound it almost hurt. Since the incident, Leo hadn't just recovered. He'd blossomed, imbued with a new sense of self-assurance and a fierce pride in who we were. When his presentation ended, Jasper Colton's hand shot up. Miss Holloway, can I say something too? At her nod, Jasper stood. I used to say some not nice things about Leo's family and his lunch, he admitted, his cheeks flushing a little. But now I understand. Families can be different, but the love is the same. And for the record, he added, a grin spreading across his face, Leo's mom's blueberry oat muffins are seriously the best I've ever tasted. The classroom erupted in good-natured laughter. Leo beamed, his eyes sparkling. After the showcase, I had a chance to speak with Ms. Holloway. Leo is an extraordinary child, Ms. Vance, she said, her admiration genuine. He's navigated a very difficult experience with such grace and has grown so much from it. He's become a real leader in the classroom, a champion for kindness and understanding. Thank you, Ms. Holloway, I said, my voice thick with gratitude. Thank you for giving my son back his love for school. The bakery had also recently given me a small raise and asked me to develop a new line of sunshine muffins, inspired by Leo's nickname for his favorite treat. My blueberry oat recipe was the star. On the walk home from school that day, hand in hand with Leo, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows ahead of us, I reflected on the quiet transformations of the past few months. The Working Moms Coffee Group Clara had initiated met twice a month at a little cafe overlooking the harbor, a haven of shared stories, laughter, and mutual support. Seabreeze Elementary had indeed implemented new training programs, and there was a palpable shift towards a more mindful and inclusive culture throughout the school. Mama, Leo said, swinging my hand, will you help me brainstorm ideas for the Regional Young Inventors Fair? The theme this year is Sustainable Futures. Of course, my love. But it's not all about inventing. How about we go see that new animated movie about the talking sea creatures this weekend? My treat. Really? Awesome. That night, I made a celebratory dinner, Leo's beloved shepherd's pie, but this time with a side of the roasted Brussels sprouts he'd recently decided he liked. As we ate, we talked about dreams, big and small. When I grow up, Leo announced, his expression serious, I want to do something that helps people, like you do, Mama. Maybe I'll be a marine biologist or an engineer who designs things to clean the ocean. Those are wonderful dreams, my Leo. Your Papa Mark might not have seen it, but you have a brilliant future ahead of you, and you'll achieve whatever you set your heart on. But it costs a lot of money, doesn't it, to go to a good university? I took his hand. Don't you worry about that. With your brilliant mind, there will be scholarships. And Mama will keep baking those sunshine muffins and saving every penny. My small promotion at the bakery, along with the popularity of my muffin line, had eased our financial worries a little, allowing a small seed of hope for his future to be planted. 6 months later, under a crisp, bright autumn sky, Leo stood on the stage at the Regional Young Inventors Fair. His project, Port Blossom Power, a community-based wave energy converter, had won first prize. Not only was I there, beaming with pride, but Miss Holloway had come too, along with Clara and a few other friends from the bakery and our mother's group, all cheering wildly. And the grand prize winner is Leo Vance, the announcer declared, and the auditorium erupted in applause. As Leo accepted his trophy, his eyes scanned the audience and found mine. He stepped up to the microphone, his small voice clear and strong. I want to dedicate this award to my mom, he said. She's my biggest hero. The lunches she makes for me every single day aren't just food. They're like sunshine and courage packed into a box. My mom taught me that what makes a family and what makes a life rich isn't about how much money you have or what things look like on the outside. It's about how much you care for each other and the love you put into everything you do. I wiped away tears, my applause lost in the standing ovation that swelled around us. That night, we had a special celebration dinner. As Leo happily devoured a slice of the homemade chocolate cake I'd baked, he looked at me, his eyes shining. Mama, he said, we're the best team, aren't we? Yes, my sweet boy, I smiled, my heart overflowing. The very best team in the whole wide world. The next morning, as the first hint of dawn touched the sky over Port Blossom, I was in my kitchen, lovingly preparing Leo's lunch. The same veggie wrap, the same sliced fruit, the same blueberry oat muffin. He carried that blue lunchbox to school with a quiet pride. No one called his lunch sad or simple anymore. It was, as he'd once called it, a sunshine lunch, the richest lunch in the world, made with the most precious ingredient of all, a mother's boundless, unwavering love. And in the gentle rhythm of our days, in the warmth of our small cottage by the sea, we continued to bake our own happiness, one loving act, one shared dream at a time.